My wife came to dinner that night thinking she was about to end our marriage on her terms. What she didn't know was that the man she'd been running to for 7 months had been reporting back to me the entire time. She thought she held every card. She was sitting at my table. The restaurant was called Ilara. It sat on the 14th floor of a glass building in downtown Detroit, and on a clear night you could see the river from the east-facing tables. I had reserved table 12, the same table where Diane and I had our first real date 11 years ago. Same white linen, same low candlelight, same view. I had requested it specifically, and the hostess had made a note in the system. I remember thinking, when I arrived and saw the table set exactly as I had asked, that even the small things were still capable of feeling like something. And I was early. I am always early. I sat down, ordered still water, and waited for my wife. Diane walked in at 7:14. She was wearing a navy dress I had never seen before, her hair pinned up the way she used to wear it when we were first together. She looked beautiful. I want to be clear about that because it matters to the story. She looked like the woman I married. She looked like someone who had spent real time getting ready for an evening that meant something to her. And it did mean something, just not what I once hoped it would. I stood when she reached the table. I pulled out her chair. She sat, placed her clutch beside her, and smiled at me in a way I had learned, over the past 3 months, to read correctly. It was not a smile of love. It was a smile of management. The kind you give someone when you are handling them, keeping them calm while something else is happening just beyond their sight. I had seen that smile many times by then, and every time I felt the same thing. Not anger, not heartbreak, but a cold and specific kind of clarity. The kind that comes when you already know everything and are simply waiting for the right moment to show your hand. I smiled back. I asked how her day was. She told me. I listened. The candle between us burned steadily, and to anyone watching, we were just a couple having a quiet anniversary dinner. That is exactly what she believed we were. A husband who did not know. A wife who was about to make her move. I need to take you back to January because nothing about that dinner makes sense without what came before it. I found out about the affair on a Tuesday, not because of a gut feeling. Not because of lipstick on a collar, because of a notification on our shared iPad that Diane had forgotten I still had access to. A calendar invite, the kind you send someone when you want them to know where to meet you. The location was a hotel on Woodward Avenue. The time was 2 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. The name attached to the invite was Derek Cannon. I did not confront her that night. I did not confront her the next day, or the week after that. I sat with it. I turned it over. And somewhere in the middle of the second sleepless night, I made a decision that I believe saved me from making the kind of scene that would have cost me everything. I decided that if Diane wanted out of this marriage, she was going to leave it the way she came in, with exactly what was hers and not a single thing more. To do that, I needed information. And to get information, I needed to be patient. I called my attorney, a woman named Patricia Cole, on a Thursday morning. I told her what I had found. She told me what I needed to document and what I needed to protect. She said the words dissipation of marital assets, and I wrote them down. Over the following 2 weeks, I pulled every financial record I could access. Joint accounts, shared investments, credit statements. What I found turned my stomach. Over 7 months, Diane had moved $43,000 out of our joint savings in increments small enough to avoid triggering any automatic alerts. Hotel stays, flights, dinners, gifts. The paper trail was clean to anyone who was not looking. But I was looking, and Patricia was looking, and we documented everything. Here is the part of the story that people find hardest to believe. I did not set out to contact Derek Cannon. That was never part of the original plan. But plans change when the information changes, and the information changed when I found out who Derek actually was. His full name was Derek Cannon, and he worked in commercial real estate. He was 38 years old, divorced, and he had a cousin named Raymond, who I happened to know through a contractor I had used on a project 2 years prior. Raymond and Derek had a falling out, serious enough that Raymond no longer spoke his name without a particular kind of bitterness. I filed that away. 2 months into my documentation process, I reached out to Raymond. I told him what I needed. I told him I was not looking for violence, I was not looking for humiliation, and I was looking for leverage. Raymond listened. He said he would think about it. 4 days later, he called me back and said Derek would meet me. We met at a coffee shop on a Tuesday afternoon, two men who, by all appearances, had no reason to be in the same room. Derek was uncomfortable. I was not. I told him exactly what I had and exactly what I could do with it. I was not threatening him. I was simply informing him of the landscape. Then I told him what I was offering instead. The offer was straightforward. Derek would continue the relationship exactly as it was. He would feed me information, when they met, what was discussed, what Diane was planning. In exchange, I would not pursue him in any civil action. And I would make sure certain information about his own financial dealings, information Raymond had shared with me, stayed exactly where it was. Derek was not a good man, but he was a practical one. He agreed within 20 minutes. We shook hands. He ordered another coffee. I left. Over the next 6 weeks, Derek fed me everything. I learned that Diane had been planning to ask for a divorce for at least 4 months. I learned that she had already consulted her own attorney, a fact she had hidden carefully. I learned that she intended to cite irreconcilable differences and push for an even split of all marital assets, counting on the fact that I would not know about the money she had already moved. I learned that she and Derek had discussed a timeline. She would ask for the divorce by April, and by summer they planned to move in together. I learned all of this sitting in my own home, in my own chair, going about my own life, while my wife sat across from me at our kitchen table and told me about her day. The last thing Derek told me, and this came just 10 days before the dinner, was that Diane was planning to use the anniversary as the moment. She was going to sit across from me at a romantic dinner, let me believe the evening was a reconciliation, and then tell me she wanted out. She thought the setting would soften the blow. She thought I would be too blindsided to respond with anything other than shock. She had practiced what she was going to say. Derek heard her practice it on the phone the night before. He told me every word. If this story is hitting close to home, now follow the page. There is a lot more where this came from. New stories drop every day, and you do not want to miss what comes next. I called Patricia the next morning. I told her we were ready to move. She filed the divorce papers that afternoon, citing financial fraud and dissipation of marital assets, with every document attached. The papers were served to Diane's attorney of record at 4:17 p.m. on April 19th. Diane did not know. Her attorney had not yet reached her. By the time she put on that navy dress and walked into Alara on the evening of April 20th, she had already been filed against. She just had not been told yet. We ordered. Diane had the salmon. I had the steak. We talked the way people talk when they are performing a version of normal. Surface topics, careful language, nothing that reached below the waterline. She asked about my mother. I asked about her sister. We split a bottle of red wine that I had chosen in advance, and she commented that it was a good one, and I agreed. At some point, she reached across the table and touched my hand, and I let her, and I looked at her when she did it, and I thought about 11 years, and a kitchen table, and a shared iPad, and $43,000 and a hotel on Woodward Avenue. I thought about all of it in the space of about 4 seconds, and then I picked up my wine glass and I took a slow sip. It was 8:47 when her phone lit up on the table beside her clutch. She had placed it face down when she sat, the way she always did when she was with me lately, a habit she had developed without realizing how much it told me. When it lit up, she glanced at it reflexively, the way anyone does, and then something changed in her face. It was small. Most people would not have caught it. But I had been watching her face for 3 months, the way a navigator watches the horizon, and I caught it. She reached for the phone, looked at the screen, and said she needed to use the restroom. Her voice was steady. Her hands were not. She was gone for 6 minutes. I know because I watched the time. When she came back to the table, her face was composed in that particular way that takes effort, the kind of compose that is one layer above panic. She sat down. She picked up her wine glass. She set it back down without drinking. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and placed a manila envelope on the table between us. I did not slide it toward her. I simply placed it there, the way you place something that belongs somewhere. She looked at the envelope. She looked at me. I said nothing. She asked what it was. I told her she could open it. She did not move for a long moment. Then she reached forward and picked it up. Her fingers found the unsealed flap, and she pulled out what was inside. The first document was a printed summary of every transfer she had made over 7 months. Dates, amounts, destination accounts. $43,000 laid out in rows, clean and exact. The second document was a signed affidavit from Derek Cannon. 4 pages, detailed, witnessed and notarized 2 days prior. The third document was the first page of the divorce filing, time-stamped April 19th at 4:17 p.m., and with Patricia's name at the bottom and the words, dissipation of marital assets, visible in the 3rd paragraph. Diane sat very still. The candle between us was still burning. Somewhere behind us, a table was laughing at something. The city was still moving outside the windows. She put the documents down on the white linen, and she looked at me, and she opened her mouth, and I held up one hand. Just one hand. Quietly. The way you stop a conversation you are not interested in having. I told her that Patricia would be in touch with her attorney on Monday morning. I told her that everything she had moved had been documented and would be addressed in the proceedings. I told her that Derek had made his choice 3 months ago and that I hoped it had been worth it to her. Then I folded my napkin, placed it on the table, and stood up. I had already paid the bill in advance when I made the reservation. I had tipped the server 40%. I had thought of everything. I buttoned my jacket, pushed in my chair, and told Diane that the table was paid for and she was welcome to stay if she wanted to finish her wine. I meant it genuinely. Then I walked through the restaurant, past the hostess who had reserved table 12 exactly as I asked, through the glass doors, and into the elevator. I pressed the lobby button. The doors closed, and that was the last time I sat across from my wife. The proceedings took 4 months. Patricia was thorough, and Diane's attorney knew before the first hearing that the financial documentation was airtight. The $43,000 was addressed in the settlement. The asset split reflected the fraud. And Derek disappeared from the picture entirely. I held up my end of the arrangement, and he moved on to whatever came next for a man like him. I do not think about him often. He was a tool in a situation I did not create, and when the situation was resolved, the tool was no longer relevant. What I think about, when I think about any of it, is the moment she reached across the table and touched my hand. Not because it hurt me. By that point, the grief had already run its course. Somewhere in the long quiet nights of January and February, when I sat alone in a house that no longer felt like mine. I think about it because of what it represents. She touched my hand because she believed she was in control of that evening. She had a script, a timeline, and a practice speech. But she sat down at that table with the confidence of someone who had already won. That touch was the last move in a game she did not know had ended months before she arrived. I chose patience over reaction. I chose documentation over confrontation. And I chose to let her walk into that restaurant believing she held all the cards, right up until the moment she opened that envelope and realized the deck had been mine the whole time. Some people will say I was cold. Some will say I went too far. But I will say this. I did not lose myself, not once. And when it was all over, I still recognized the man in the mirror. That, more than anything, was the win. She came to that dinner thinking she had already won. The game had been over for months. She just had not been told the score. If this story moved you, follow the page and share it with someone who needs to hear it. New stories drop every day. I will see you in the next one.